Hello, my name is Rae Hancock, Behavior Support Specialist for Montgomery County Board of Developmental Disabilities Services. Today we are going to review Part 5 of the DD Bill of Rights, which involves rights for social relationships. It is important for us to provide opportunities for individuals with disabilities to connect with others socially. It is also important that within these relationships, we as support do not directly guide others towards relationships we would prefer them to have. Our role as support staff is to provide education, support, and other resources to assist with developing the relationships that they have chosen. Individuals with developmental disabilities have the right to talk to other people. Within these social relationships, it's important that we recognize that individuals can choose to communicate with whom they want to and in any manner they desire. Examples include calling, writing, visiting, or talking to anyone they want, regardless of subject matter and the provider's personal opinions. As providers, we should be prepared to discuss health and safety risks of current issues such as social media and dating and sex websites. For example, appropriate versus unsafe use of the internet and the apps on smartphones in communicating with people. Individuals have a right to use technology to communicate with people, so it would be good to facilitate discussion about how to do it safely. As providers and caregivers, we need to be prepared to discuss health and safety risks of current issues with the individuals that we assist. An example would be social media, dating sites, dating websites, dating apps on smartphones. It's important to talk about these topics with the individuals we assist in ways that they understand. So some of this may be through pictures, some may be just through conversation, some may be just extending contacts with resources that are more educated and more informed about the topics that need to be discussed. In general, we know that we as people are going to talk to who we want to, when we want to, regardless of what other people think. For the most part of it. But it's better to have the conversations ahead of time so that the person making the decisions are informed and can make safer decisions for themselves. Individuals with developmental disabilities have the right to have men and women as friends. This is independent of provider's opinion. This is also independent of the parent or guardian's opinion. For example, a guardian cannot say that an individual is not allowed to have any social interactions with someone from the opposite sex. That would be against that person's rights. Individuals with developmental disabilities have the right to live without bullying or abuse from anyone. The word abuse is a broad term that describes any behavior that is unwanted, any behavior that intentionally harms an individual, any behavior that is demeaning or insulting to an individual, or any behavior that causes another person to be afraid. It is important that we, as the provider, caregiver, ensure that the individual understands the definition of abuse. We hear the word, but do we really know what that means? The provider needs to be an open door for allowing the individuals to express their feelings of being abused and be non-judging of any of that information that is shared with them. For example, if we are supporting someone who is in a relationship with someone else who is rude and disrespectful, we should simply not say, "You can't see this person." Instead, we should use opportunities to teach, educate, and inform the individual of better responses during a conflict, or provide examples of more positive relationships by role playing or modeling. Individuals with developmental disabilities are an at-risk group for abuse and exploitation. What does this mean? Compared to the general population, individuals with developmental disabilities are more at risk of abuse. They are abused more frequently, they're abused for longer periods of time, they are less likely to access the justice system, they're more likely to be abused by caregiver or someone that they know, and they are more likely to remain in an abusive situation instead of trying to resolve that situation or get out of it. People with disabilities are more susceptible to abuse for many reasons. Some of these reasons are predators may perceive a person with disabilities as weak, vulnerable, or less likely to report abuse, making them easy targets. People with disabilities are often isolated and dependent on a small circle of friends or caregivers for critical support, including assistance with basic physical needs. These same caregivers are often the abusers, which poses a difficult discussion and decision for the victim, who is required to choose between the potential for continuing abuse and an uncertain future. Many of our individuals live in segregated environments, such as group homes, where abuse can occur and be hidden more easily. In addition, victims who are abused in group settings may have limited access to police, advocates, medical, or social services representatives. People with limited communication abilities and cognitive disabilities may find it difficult to report abuse effectively, as to be either understood in what they're saying or to be taken seriously. Many people with disabilities are afraid that they will not be believed when they go to report abuse. Many people with disabilities have been verbally abused, resulting in low self-esteem and in some cases, a belief that the abuse is somehow deserved. It is easier to abuse or exploit someone if you inherently believe that people with disabilities are less human, less valuable, or don't have any contributions to society as a whole. Abuse can take the forms of ranging from overt physical and or sexual assaults to bullying and emotional abuse that are more difficult to prove, but whittle away at a person's dignity and sense of worth. How can we as providers and caregivers counteract some of the reasons why individuals with disabilities tend to be abused more often than others? Now let's go back and discuss how we can counteract some of the reasons why individuals with disabilities are more likely to be abused and what our role would be to try to decrease this risk. Example number one was predators perceive an individual with disabilities as weak and vulnerable. To counteract that risk, we could teach basic defense skills and review scenarios verbally with the individuals we work with. Teach, train, educate, and support. So teaching those basic defense skills. Reason number two, less likely to report the abuse. Let's encourage open communication with the individuals we serve. If they're in the middle of telling us something important, let's not shut that down. Let's keep those lines of communication going. Let's not get in a rush. Let's listen, active listening. Reason number three, less likely to report the abuse. We need to empower independence within the individuals we serve. We need to match their abilities with that empowerment. Another reason, individuals with disabilities are more dependent on others for their support. So as a provider, a caregiver, we want to encourage individuals to build relationships with advocates, friends, other staff. We don't want to form those unique relationships and put ourselves in a position of being the main team member. The bigger the team, the better, and the more support that someone has. So we need to encourage those relationships on every level. Another reason individuals with disabilities are more likely to be abused is they are more likely to be isolated from others in segregated living conditions. Again, this is more of just encouraging relationships. Also ensuring that there's access to a phone in the home at all times, access to mail at all times if the person likes to write or prefers to write. We just need to make sure that there's some transparency there with the individual and the external world outside of their segregated living condition. Individuals with disabilities having limited access to police and others who could intervene. We need to teach and encourage other forms of communication. We also need to bridge that gap between our individuals and these other resources, such as the police, and what police can do for them. Um, I know we have some individuals that frequently contact police, and that's okay. We just need to define the relationship um, and teach the ways that police are there to help us. So we shouldn't stay clear of bridging that gap between individuals and police because we're afraid someone's going to call them too often. That's train, educate, and support, and we can tackle that. We just need to make sure that that safety net is there and individuals know that that safety net is present if they need it. Providers also need to ensure that the individual understands the definition of abuse. The provider needs to be an open door for allowing the individual to express their feelings of being abused. Again, listen, not reacting. If someone shares an abuse with us, we need to remain calm, listen. Don't fill in gaps, don't make suggestions. We can easily influence individuals in our relationships with them. So we just really want to listen and then reiterate to the person that they are safe and secure with us present. Let's talk about an example. We are supporting someone who is in a relationship with someone else who is rude and disrespectful. And we dislike seeing the level of disrespect between the two of them. We want to advocate for our individual that we work with to make better decisions. We shouldn't simply say, you can't see this person. We know from experience that that's just going to make the person want to see the person even more, quite honestly. And then also, that's just violating someone's rights. We can't judge someone else's relationship. What we can do is use opportunities to teach, educate, and inform the individual of better responses when conflicts arise. For example, if they start fighting, um, we as staff can research and provide information of best ways to address conflict, tell the other person how you're feeling. We can also recommend private counseling if that's what's needed, personal therapy. Um, but again, just getting them supports that they need, and in an unjudging way, and not interjecting our feelings of how we feel about the relationship. Let's go over a few scenarios and think this through on best ways to respond. Um, so, Roxanne is a 28-year-old female. She's very social and outgoing person. She's just arrived home from her day at vocational programming. Roxanne walks in and says excitedly, I want to have sex with Sam. Take a moment and think how you're going to respond to Roxanne coming in excitedly and saying, I want to have sex with Sam. All right, let's provide examples of what not to do. Do not dismiss what Roxanne said when she came in, such as, we are going to talk about that. Let's just go get ready for our evening. That's just halting any kind of conversation, breaking down that communication and that trust that Roxanne has with us, and just taking an excited sentence and making it negative. So we do not want to just dismiss it and direct onto something else. Something else we don't want to say. No, you don't even know how to have sex. Don't say that. It could be that the person may not actually know the steps involved, and the physical nature of having sex. However, before we say, no, you don't even know how to have sex, let's determine what that person does know about sex. let's ask them, describe what, let's talk about a date. Tell me more about Sam. Where did you meet him or her? What does he like to do? She like to do? Um, Maybe the next good step is to help Roxanne plan a date. Roxanne, would you like to learn more about dating and relationships? Learn it together, facilitate the path together, um, and you're more likely to interject some positive information, some helpful information, and not shut down the lines of communication. All right, let's go to the second scenario. Fitz is 22 years old. He has heard that a group of his friends are going to a local strip club this Friday night. Fitz receives check-ins from his support staff throughout the day. Support staff remind Fitz to take his medication and talks with Fitz about his daily plans. Fitz proceeds to tell his staff about going to the local strip club this Friday night with his friends. The last thing as provider and caregiver that we want to do with Fitz is to tell him, no, you can't go to the strip club. Number one, we're interjecting our feelings and our thoughts about what strip clubs mean to us. We cannot make that decision on Fitz's behalf. We need to remain objective, and think about risk and safety. So we want to talk to him about, keeping his hands to himself, following the rules at the strip club. Maybe going at an earlier time frame instead of a later time frame, so there's less people there, especially if Fitz has a difficult time with large crowds. So we want to help problem solve the activity, not judge the activity. It's not on us to control Fitz's choices when it comes to how he spends his leisure time. So, but what we can do is train and educate and inform of the risks of the steps and parameters and maybe the rules of the location, and just how to handle himself in a safe manner during the activity. If this is something that you're not comfortable doing, we're going to find ourselves in situations that we're not comfortable talking about, then grab someone else and bring them into the conversation. We want this person to have information in as most non-judging way as we can. So if that includes bringing in someone else, like a male, to talk to Fitz about the strip clubs, then I would encourage you to do that. When it comes to social relationships, we often find ourselves involved in scenarios where individuals we assist may choose relationships that we may dislike on their behalf. For example, same-sex relationships. Support staff should encourage the individual to use resources in the local community, whether the staff has personal experience with same-sex relationships or not. Sometimes the individuals we support want to be like us or make decisions that they believe will please us. Staff should remain neutral and unbiased during these types of conversations, and instead seek out the appropriate resources pertaining to the topic, the resources that could teach, educate, and inform, such as the local LGBT center or Planned Parenthood or local support and activity group. Another example would be an individual seeking friendships with others who abuse drugs. Again, we may not have, we may have our own experience with that. We have to realize that everyone's experiences are different. So again, we just need to follow on those resources who are trained to tackle these types of situations, such as Al-Anon, NA, AA. There's all kinds of resources out there. We just have to research that and find them. If it's a subject that we're not comfortable or feel like we're capable and trained in providing information in, if that makes sense. In summary, relationships, our social relationships, are very important to all of us. The main thing as primary caregivers, providers, advocates, we just have to be willing to put our own emotions and feelings and ideas and thoughts at the side and be as objective as we can when assisting individuals with relationships. Um, we also need to be willing to seek outside resources whenever and wherever possible if we feel that those relationships are harmful or pose risk. Thanks for joining. Bye.